Hello and welcome to the Unit 2 micro lesson. And this particular week we are working with Visual Basic items, including variables and kind of creating programs and things along those lines. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of walk you through a sample macro that I created. And it's a very, very simple macro. So all it does is, I'm going to go over to the main thing here. So I'm just going to go here. I'm going to do macros. I'm going to view my macros. There's my sample macro, and I'm going to run. And it says, please enter a name. George. Because, that's the best name ever. It puts George there, and then it puts 6 there. That's all it does. So what I want to do is I want to actually show you how that works. So the very first thing I do is I put a dim str sample as string. This is a sample string called str sample. Dim is short for dimension, and what that does is that goes off into memory. It finds a location to put the information in, and it just, anytime I refer to str sample, it knows I'm going to that place in memory and I'm looking at the container to see what it's in. At the point in time when I create str sample, it just blanks out whatever data is actually contained within str sample, and it sits there and it waits. If you don't ever put anything in it, str sample is blank. Then right here where it says str sample is equal to input box, please enter a name entry. Now you'll get to the input box feature eventually, but all this does is that pulled up that little menu, or excuse me, the little dialog box that allowed you to put in the name that said please enter a name. Then it selects the range called A2. Now later on, as I get more fancy, I can change the range based off variable input, based off user input, and things like this, but I wanted to keep it totally simple, right? Then it says, okay, whatever the active cell is, this sets the active cell, put it equal to str sample, which is this value right here. Then it says dim int value as integer. This goes off into memory. It finds a location in memory called int value, and it finds a place in memory. It then reserves that for an integer value, and it calls it int value. You'll note that these variable naming conventions here, now you can call it whatever you want, but I highly recommend you call it something that represents the values within it. So for instance, int value is integer value, um, meaning that it's a variable, it's a integer variable that has a value in it. This is a string variable that has a sample in it, or sample. Actually kind of a bad name, doesn't matter. Then what I do is I say, okay, int value is equal to, makes initial value or starting value equal to 2. Then it adds 4, and that's why it wrote 6 on there. And then it selects a 3, and then it puts a value in there of 6. Now I can modify it. I can come in here and let's say I can put in a 6 there, right? So now what it's going to do, the initial value is going to be 2. This is going to be 6. So it's going to put an 8 in A3. So if I go back, I'm going to go ahead and save this. Oh, I want to go, sorry. File, I'm going to save sample. Yes, okay, great. And then I go over to this, and I'm going to click right back here. And I'm going to macros. I'm going to view my macros, and I'm going to run this macro right here. And it says, please enter a name. I'm going to put in Czar, because it could be my name. And that's going to be 8. So it accesses A1 because that's the input box, puts in czar, then it accesses A2, and it puts in 8, right? So I can continue. Now, here's another interesting thing. Let's say I'm going along, and I've got problems on this line. Or let's do this line. Okay. I can take my mouse pointer, click off to the left, and I can create a breakpoint. Now, what a breakpoint does, anytime you're actually working with code in any way, shape, or form, code usually executes, okay? It always executes in a line-by-line fashion. So anything, basically the way this works is I want to break the execution on this line. And I'm saying anything above that line has already been executed. That line and below hasn't been executed. So now if I come along and I run this bad boy, right? And I want to say, all right, so I run it. Please enter a name. I'm going to enter in Ford. Okay. And I push OK. It actually stops the code on that line. Now, I've entered a value for str sample. If I take my mouse pointer over str sample, it says Ford. Awesome. And if I use, I believe it's F8 step through. Yes, F8 allows me to step line by line. The yellow line is where I'm executed at. So int value is equal to 2. Notice I'm adding 6 if I click F8. Now int value is going to be 8. So I'm allowed to kind of step through the code, figure out what's going on. Now it's going to select this range, right? And then it's going to put that range equal to whatever int value is, which is 8 at this point in time. You'll notice I also have these other bits over here that have the apostrophes in front of them. Those are comments. Comments are great because they allow you to take out part of the code from the execution, but you can still see it. So for instance, in this case, all of this was already there when I originally recorded the macro, my GGG. I commented that out so I could still have access to that information if I wanted. Over here, I give a guide as to what's going on in each particular case. So I hope that helps you a little bit. I hope that gives you an idea of kind of how to work with macros, how to troubleshoot some of the Visual Basic code and things along those lines. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, good job so far. Thank you.